There we go. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our biweekly capital update with our friends at BCA, telling us what's happening with the legislature as we go through this 2026 legislative session. And today are pleased to be joined by Caroline Franklin with BCA, who is going to give us all the ins and outs of what has happened in the last 2 weeks and what to expect in the last week before their spring break. So with that, Caroline, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Paige. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be with y'all this morning. I hope everyone might get a little break for spring break, whether that's now or in the next few weeks. Hopefully, everyone has a minute to kind of wind down and rest before the craziness of the end of the session. So, like Paige said, the clock is winding down. We're ticking down to the final days of session. We've completed Legislative Day 22 yesterday. So we have 8 more days to go this session, which is crazy to say out loud. Sometimes I feel like these last 10 or 8 days can seem like 2 seconds or 20 years. So I feel like it'll feel like both at the same time, which is crazy, but we're at that point in the session. Just an update on some of the bills that I know we've touched on before to give y'all an update on where they are now. The Speaker's CTE bills, which y'all know is one of his top priorities this session. HB 517 and HB 520. They both passed the House and now they're awaiting further action in the Senate. HB 517 is called the TRAIN Act, and that bill would give tax credits to employers who temporarily loan out their employees to eligible community colleges and public high schools to teach CTE courses. So that bill is awaiting a vote in Senate committee. And then HB 520 was reported out of Senate committee this week. This bill is the one that would create a quicker pathway for existing teachers in other states to move here to Alabama to become CTE teachers. So as we told y'all before, these two bills are outcomes of several conversations that happened between state leaders and industry leaders. So as y'all know, we need to train up the workforce here in Alabama to align with where our state is headed. We have to make sure that we are adequately training those students as they approach the age to join the workforce. And so the speaker feels like these two bills will really help advance that. So also some exciting news, the budgets finally began moving this week. The education budget started in the House this year, and then the general fund budget started in the Senate. Both budgets passed in their chambers of origin this week, which is great. Just a little bit of highlight on those. The general fund totals $3.72 billion. That's about $37 million above what Governor Ivey recommended this year for the budget, and nearly $8.5 million more than the current fiscal year's budget. So that increase in the general fund includes funding for the legislature's first payment on the new State House building, additional support for our state court system, a 2% raise for state employees, and then some increased contributions to SEIB, which is projected to have a shortfall next year. And then the Education Trust Fund budget totals a record $10.5 billion. And this includes funding for the RAISE Fund, a 2% pay raise for state-funded education employees, additional funding to address rising health insurance costs with PHIP, and then increased support for schools and higher education institutions. So as I said, those budgets both passed in their chamber of origin this week. So next week we'll see them moving in the opposite chambers for further consideration there. And then exciting news, I'm sure you've all seen PSC is back. I'm sure y'all have been kind of paying attention to that in the last few weeks. A few weeks ago, Senator Tuberville kind of floated the idea of expanding the PSC and creating a Secretary of Energy position to oversee the Public Service Commission. So we did see that happen this week in the Senate. The Senate introduced a bill, SB 360. And if you saw it, you maybe noticed that every single senator was a sponsor or co-sponsor on that bill. So tons of support, obviously, to expand the PSC from 3 elected members to 7 elected members. So there would be 1 elected member per congressional district. And then this would also create a Secretary of Energy position, like I said, to oversee kind of that administrative function of the committee. So this has a lot of support in the legislature. Obviously, this is an issue that they've been wanting to work on and reform. They just wanted to make sure they really got this right. So I think what we saw over the last few weeks is kind of the House and the Senate, and industry leaders getting together and really seeing how they could preserve Alabamians' right to vote, for their PSC member, but also how can we reform the system to better represent Alabamians all across the state and make sure there's representation from each area. So this bill passed the Senate on Thursday. Unanimously, obviously, with all of those senators being sponsors. And so now we will see that bill move next week in the House. So we'll keep watching that and keep you all posted. We also saw 2 bills related to data centers that passed the Senate this week. As you probably remember, those 2 bills were part of the original package with that original PSC reform bill. SB 265, which is sponsored by Senator Andrew Jones, it was one of the bills. This bill would limit the maximum exemption period for abatements available to data processing centers from 30 years to 20 years. And then SB 270, which was sponsored by Senator Lance Bell, would require the Public Service Commission to consider specific factors when they evaluate contracts between utilities and these large load data centers. And some of those factors include ensuring that increased costs tied to the data center are recovered from the facility and not passed on to ratepayers. So that's one of the things that's included in that bill to make sure that we protect ratepayers from any increased costs related to those data centers. Together, I think these bills, aim to create clearer parameters for evaluating and incentivizing these data center projects in our state. And they also provide greater predictability, I think, for the business community while protecting the ratepayers. So those were passed in the Senate and they will move on to the House for consideration. So we'll keep watching those as well. Another bill I wanted to just kind of touch on real quick is HB 539. This is by Representative Ben Robbins. He introduced this bill, I believe, last week or the week before. This bill would require local economic development authorities, counties, and municipalities to obtain approval from the Commerce Department and the governor before waiving certain state taxes or offering tax abatements as part of incentive packages. So currently, I'm sure as a lot of you know, these entities have authority to structure those incentives locally. So requiring this additional state level approval could really slow down that incentive process and increase administrative burdens on the Commerce Department, which obviously could potentially impact our state's competitiveness when we're recruiting these economic development projects. So our team spoke with Representative Robbins about some concerns that we have with this bill. And I know Robin Ricks at EDAA is also working on this, and it looks like this bill is not going to be moving this session. So that's good news there. Just wanted to let y'all know in case anyone was tracking that bill. Another fun thing, this really has nothing to do with us, but I'm sure y'all saw, and this just kind of tells you all of the work that the legislature is up to this session. But the House approved a proposed constitutional amendment that's going to appear on the November ballot. It's going to ask whether public schools should be required to allow a voluntary student-led prayer and Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of each day. So if that's approved by voters, participation would remain optional for these schools, and local school boards would be responsible for adopting the policies around how that prayer period would be implemented. Obviously, this generated a lot of discussion on the House floor this week. So we watched about an hour of discussion go on in the House, which was interesting. So just wanted to kind of float that in there because, we always have to have legislation like this in the Alabama State House. That's what makes us so unique. So just wanted to throw that little nugget in there. And that's really kind of what happened over the last 2 weeks. So we had a 3-day week this week. Next week, I think what we're hearing is that it's going to be a 2-day week. I feel like every time I say out loud it's going to be a 2-day or a 3-day week, they switch it. So we'll keep our eyes peeled to see kind of what happens, but we're hearing 2-day week, which would mean that we would complete, I guess, legislative day 24 if we have a 2-day week next week. If not, we'll be completing day 25. So either way, we're getting closer and closer to the end of the session. And obviously, as y'all know, as the clock ticks down, there's really it's hard to start passing your bills. You really next week is probably when we need to start seeing things be passed that you're hoping you see pass. And really, we'll just be on the lookout for any bad bills that might be kind of left out there in the atmosphere and making sure that they don't move. So really, I think that's kind of all that I have, but I'll open it up to maybe any questions and comments or anything that y'all are watching that y'all would like to make sure that we're aware of in the last few days of the session.
Does anybody
No
have
one? Everyone's ready for spring break?
Amber?
I just want to ask, Crystal couldn't join today. She had another commitment, but just for her, just to make sure, HB 358, I know she is following that. Is there any
Okay.
movement or anything you can share on that I could maybe make a note on that for her?
Let me check 1 minute just to pull it up.
It's the foreign agent registration and reporting.
Oh, yes, I do remember her bringing this up.
Mhm.
Um,
It's the bill that mentions hostile when it talks about foreign-owned
yes.
Yes.
businesses and companies. And we have GE Appliances, a hire company indicator, which is one of our largest industries. And so they raised
Gotcha.
concern about it, which is what raised our concern about it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, it looks like this is a House bill by Representative Ed Oliver. It looks like it has not been passed by the House yet, which is probably a good sign that it hasn't moved out of its House of origin, just given how many days are left in the session. But we will continue to keep an eye on that, and if we see it moving at all, we'll keep y'all posted and see what we can do on that end.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Caroline, I have not had a chance to look at fully SB 360, the new PSC, expanding
Yeah.
to 7. I know, is voting going to be based on the 7 districts? So,
Yes. So the 7 congressional districts,
okay.
yes. And I really haven't taken a deep dive down into it, but from my understanding, it looks like we will continue with the current elections that are to be held in 2026 for the PSC for those 3 seats.
So
Um,
state,
Yes, and
okay.
then there will be 4 governor appointed new positions added to create the 7 member board. And then moving forward, all of those 7 positions will be elected per congressional district.
Okay.
So they'll be originally appointed by the governor, obviously, to increase
Right.
that committee, but after that, we will vote on all 7, and you will vote per your congressional district.
Okay. In 4 years from now, so
Correct.
2030.
Should be, yes, correct.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Does anyone have any other questions? Thank you, Team Decatur, for reminding us. I'm on SB 358.
Yes, thank you for that. It's hard to keep up with all these bills sometimes, especially at the end of
How,
the session.
yeah, considering the volume that
Yeah,
has been
especially when, the topics of what we're dealing with are so wide-ranging.
diverse.
It's really tough to keep up with, but we do have a running list, so thank you for reminding me.
All right. If there are no other questions for the greater good, thank you guys for all that you do. Thank you, Caroline, and the whole team for keeping us on track. The last Tuesday morning briefing, is that correct?
Yes. Yes, correct. Last Tuesday morning briefing is this coming Tuesday. We will have House Majority Leader, our new House Majority Leader, Paul Lee, and then Senate Majority Leader, Steve Livingston. They'll both join us for a fun discussion. We're going to try and keep it super lighthearted leading into spring break, obviously. But that will be our final one on Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Anyone that's in Montgomery for the day is welcome to join us. We also will live stream that on our Facebook page.
And I understand you have a former chamber director as the moderator for that.
Yes. Okay. I'm so sorry. Remind me who it is.
It's Dean Mitchell from Dothan.
Yes. Okay. I thought so. Great.
Yep,
And we had Jim Page, I guess, last week too.
yep.
So we have all of our chamber people, which is
All our
great.
chamber folks. So yeah, you're in
Yeah. So that'll be great.
if you're in Montgomery, come see us. We'll be hanging out with Dean for a little bit. So, thank you guys, and I can't let you guys go without another plug. Executive Leadership Conference coming up April 28th through 30th in Huntsville. Room block closes very soon. We had a great program in store, so if you have not signed up yet, come see us in Huntsville. Caroline, I'll see you on Monday. Y'all
Yes. Thank y'all. Everyone have a
have a
great
great week.
weekend.
All right, thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.